All right, welcome back. Leanne is still in conversation with the Minister of Finance, Finance Gordhan. They're dissecting his budget that he tabled yesterday. So as Leanne calls it, it's the morning after the budget speech. Let's take some of the questions that you have to the Minister. I know Leanne is listening now. She will be able to relay the questions to the Minister. Let's take some tweets that you sent at Morning Live SABC so that the Minister can be able to respond to your tweets. All right. The first one is from Owen Nkomo. The debt to GDP ratio is a big concern. Importantly, what does a minister do next year? There is limited room tax-wise. All right. The next one from Lebona Muledi. Why are individual tax increase more than corporate tax? All right. We'll get that question to the minister. We take in the next question from Una Tegruet-Boom. Why is child grant always overlooked? What is 20 Rand in these times when things have so much increased? Okay, the final one from Met Microdation. Dear Minister Pravin, tell me, as an elderly person without any family receiving a grant, how can I live on 1,000 Rand, 600? All right. So some of the tweets that you sent through, and I believe Leanne has those questions. She'll be able to post them to the Minister as I hand over to her.
Thank you very, very much. To be honest with you, I was struggling to hear the questions, as was the Minister. The Minister couldn't hear the questions either. So what we're going to have to ask is that those questions be sent to us, and then what we'll do is we will pose the questions to the Minister, and we'll get them off of the Twitter account, because I believe they were taken off of that account. So, but I think one of the questions that I did hear, Minister, was again relating to tax and corporate tax as well as the personal tax, and some asking, why is personal tax going higher and yet corporate tax is the one that's getting away with everything?
That's a familiar refrain as well. But on the corporate side, there's a much more competitive climate across the world in terms of attracting investment, attracting companies, and making sure that we are competitive at that level. Of course, an argument can be made that those that are high-income earners might move out of a country. But I think South Africa has a lot more going for it, and people are not going to move because there's a 4% increase in tax on the personal side. We as South Africa have to compete with the rest of the world to attract investment here. And I think the UK is, 20% corporate tax at the moment. And one of the things that over the years we've been trying to avoid is a race to the bottom. You make your tax rate 27, we go to 26, somebody goes to 24, we go to 22, and we shoot ourselves in the foot at the end of the day. So those are some of the reasons why you see the difference between corporate tax. And remember, in the early years, as Minister Manuel will say, corporate compliance in South Africa was very low. It only contributed, 9 to 10% of total revenue, if we go back to the late 90s and early 2000s. In the 2000s, we were able to change corporate compliance quite significantly, and we've got to make sure that we sustain it as we go into the future. There's also a lot of evasion stroke aggressive planning that takes place by corporates. All sorts of loopholes are created and exploited. Money is washed through some islands, either nearby or not so nearby. I won't mention them in case they're represented here. You have the tax planning fraternity, who forget their patriotism from time to time and engage in fairly aggressive tax practices as well. So you need a fairly agile, alert, and well-equipped tax administration to deal with some of those issues as complexity increases.
Yeah, which is one of the highlights. And I mean, we saw yesterday, and I am going to bring political parties into it. I mean, we saw your popularity amongst all of the opposition parties, standing ovations and the works. And there, the EFF are there, very much so, probably giving you the longest standing ovation. But Julius Malema...
They're good politicians.
They are. You got to give them credit for that. The EFF, obviously, what Julius Malema was saying was he was worried about this corporate tax, which contributes, as we said, less to government revenue than personal tax income. He's called for radical interventions to deal with tax avoidance and action on bank collusion, which you're talking about. What he said, there's a perception that National Treasury is soft on corporate corruption and the collusion of banks.
It's not true. You can't blame National Treasury for everything. You see, if you need to be locked up, we don't have handcuffs in our possession. We don't have a vault where we can put you. We don't have the power to actually prosecute you. That's the job of other agencies. They must do their work. We can report the malfeasance. And Mr. Human is here as the acting head of the procurement office in the National Treasury. He'll tell you about the number of reports we give to the relevant authorities, but they decide that they have an interest in other matters, to put it euphemistically. They must get on with the work and lock up the people, take them through the court processes, so that once there's a risk of A, being caught, and B, being prosecuted, and being prosecuted successfully, the compliance culture will change. And we're losing that ground, actually, compared to, say, 10 years ago. Where there was a real fear that you, inverted commas, would be caught out.
Yeah.
And today that has disappeared. So Mr. Malema is right, as are many others as well. And only if you face the prospect of severe penalties as a result of a fair judicial process through which enforcement takes place are you going to get respect for the law at the end of the day.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you can do so much and no more, and it's left to other people.
The Treasury is not government.
It's a lot more.
Treasury is just one component of government.
All right. I'm going to take another break now, unfortunately, but we're going to get the news, and guaranteed you're going to be the top story in the news. So
for a short while. Yeah.
Just for a short while. Well, hopefully. But we'll talk about that afterwards if you're okay with that. Okay. Let's get the news. It's a budget 2017, and let's find out, of course, what angle we're taking in the news this morning.